Good afternoon, everyone. I am off mute and on camera and ready to go. Welcome, Angel and Ashley and Catherine and Corinne. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, and Aggie and Michelle and Meredith and Katie. All right, we're going to give folks about another minute or so to get in the room and connected and all of that good stuff. Hope you all are well and had a good Halloween, whether or not you were with trick-or-treaters or answering your door or going to a party or just having a regular night. I hope it was good for you, no matter how it was celebrated or not. All right, let's give everyone about 30 more seconds to come into the room and get connected. Have one more person who is connecting. All right. Well, happy Tuesday, everybody. Again, welcome back to session 4 of our Staff Satisfaction Surveys Learning Collaborative. As you know, I'm Suzanne Spear. I'm the Senior Director of Workforce Development, and I have the pleasure of being with you all today. And today we're going to be talking about alternatives to staff satisfaction surveys, and I would actually augment this title, if you will, as we were going through and preparing this session for this session. We were thinking about, alternatives, but I would say ways to augment your staff satisfaction survey. So as we go along today and talk a little bit about those, really think about it as something to do in addition to your staff satisfaction surveys. Now, this is not something that should be just another thing on your plate, but it's something to help you achieve the goals that you want to achieve, which ultimately is the retention and, frankly, recruitment of your staff there. All right, so as I mentioned, y'all know I'm Suzanne. I'm here with you today. Helen is on leave today, so she's not with us, but we do have Mariah on board. So if you have any technical difficulties or issues, feel free to email her at the email on the screen, or you can always message her in the chat box, and she'd be more than happy to help you with that. All right, just housekeeping items, our typical stuff. I will just alert everyone that we are recording, as you all know, and it will be posted, our recording will be posted on the discussion board, so you can access it there if you would like to share it with colleagues, listen in, or if you missed a certain part of it, feel free to go back there. Y'all know, feel free to just put things in the chat box as you think of them as we go along, or unmute yourselves. There will be some time at the end to ask questions, but again, feel free to put them in the chat box as we go along, or just unmute yourself. We've got a really great group, and I would appreciate it if you would just ask any questions as they come up. Always happy to answer those. All right, and lastly, as a reminder, please complete the evaluation at the end of the session so we know how we did and how we can improve for future sessions. For this learning collaborative, we've seen this slide every single time. We are here to build a process and a strategy for implementing and responding to staff satisfaction surveys. We are here to share our challenges and our strengths through the breakout sessions, and we're going to be building relationships, not only with, and we have been building relationships rather, with faculty, so you and me, right? If you will, if we're just talking one-on-one, as well as the group, and also with our teams internally, because these surveys are not something that just one person does, right? It's not just something, it's not just a solo effort. It really takes a team effort to make them successful, to make the follow-up successful, and to make the action plan successful. So those relationships are also key to be developed and to have success in your surveys. And then again, just a reminder for all of the different ways and the tools that we connect with you during this learning collaborative. And one thing I wanted to just discuss briefly here is for the discussion board, you will have access to that in perpetuity. So that's not going away at the end of this learning collaborative or at the end of the 3 to 6 month follow-up period. It's going to be there. And so if there's ever anything that, you have to put something on hold and come back to, and you want to reference things again, especially the recordings or just the homework or anything that you would like to access, that'll be there for as well. All right, so today's agenda, what fun are we gonna have today? Well, we're gonna have a lot, or at least we're gonna try to have some fun. So first, we're going to take an icebreaker. It's going to be a little bit different today. It is a random geography quiz. So instead of picking your favorites or this or that, we are going to have a quiz. So stay tuned for that. We're going to do our typical homework review and reflection breakout group session and talk a little bit about our action plans and what you learn from that, maybe what some of your stumbling blocks are, things like that. Then we're going to be talking about those additions or alternatives to staff satisfaction surveys. We're going to be diving into a bunch of different alternatives, including stay interviews, as well as several other options that you can use to really gather that qualitative, mostly qualitative data in addition to the surveys. And then finally, we will go into the homework and do wrap up and final questions there. All right, so y'all know the drill. Go ahead and go to menti.com and put in the number 3282-5242, or you can also use your phone and scan the QR code there. So menti.com, 3282-5242. That's a lot of twos. Thank you, Mariah. And so I'll give you guys about another 15 seconds to get there. Since it's a quiz, I'm going to wait to share that screen until everybody is in there. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go there. So we're going to do the first of 3 questions. It looks like, let me see how many people are in here. All right, we've got most everybody in there. And so we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, so this is timed. You have 20 seconds. It's a multiple choice. So I'm going to start now. So get your fingers ready. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. Let's see. What country has the most islands? All right, so is it Canada, Indonesia, Sweden, or New Zealand? Which country out of those 4 has the most islands? We've got 10 seconds. I got this one wrong. Okay, so we have one person. I would have guessed Indonesia or Canada as well. So, but it is in fact Sweden. So good job to whomever the sole person is that got it right. All right, next one. 2 of 3. All right, here we go. Okay, where is the only tropical rainforest in the United States? All right, 6 seconds. All right, so did anyone answer Puerto Rico? Someone answered Puerto Rico, yay! Sorry, with all my windows here, I'm having a hard time seeing this. So awesome, congrats to the person who said Puerto Rico. Again, did not get this question correct. All right, last one. Question 3 of 3. What is the name of the deepest point in Earth's oceans? Is it the Tonga Trench, the Marianas Trench, the Kuril Tochka Trench, or the Mario Sunshine? All right, so a bunch of y'all got it correct, and the answer is Marianas Trench. So congratulations to everyone. I had fun playing, and I hope you guys did as well. We will see who got the most points. So Watson, congratulations. You are the winner of our little Menti contest. Awesome. Thank you all for participating. Okay, so let's get back to our slides here in our session. So those are the answers for the icebreaker there. And then let's switch gears and go to our homework review. So as you know, our homework last time was focused on action plans for responding to staff satisfaction surveys. Tammy Green was here and she talked a little bit about what they did at Anchorage Neighborhood Health with implementing them and also really responding to them and how they utilized the answers that they received from those surveys and really put them into action there. So you all then were tasked with really coming up with an action plan for responding to your own surveys, right? And so when we think about that, here's some questions that I would love for you all to discuss in the next 10 minutes. So what is one thing you learned by completing this assignment about making an action plan? And what is one challenge your team might encounter to responding to a staff satisfaction survey? And then sort of on the flip side, if you've already responded to a staff satisfaction survey before, what is one thing you'll do differently with this survey that you're planning on doing, or just in the future, one thing that is different? And maybe you just conducted your survey and are getting ready to do it. So you're getting ready to respond. So what is one thing you would do differently? Mariah is going to put you all into breakout groups, and you will have 10 minutes to discuss. And I hope you learn from each other as you all talk about your homework. All right, so looks like folks are getting their room assignments. We'll see you back here in about 10 minutes at 22 after. See you in a minute. I think most people are back. I just want to make sure we aren't missing a couple. Okay, everybody's back. All right, thank you so much. All right, well, welcome back to our main room here. I hope you all enjoyed sharing with your colleagues as well as hearing what they either are planning on doing or have done in the past in regards to responding to their staff satisfaction surveys. All right. So for the main event today, as I mentioned, we are going to be talking about some alternatives or some things you can be doing in addition to staff satisfaction surveys to really understand and really get an idea of what's going on with your health center staff and how you might improve both your retention of your current staff, as well as improving your overall culture so that you can recruit some really fabulous folks for those open positions. And one of the main things, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about today are stay interviews. And just curious, has anyone done a stay interview? Feel free to just put it either in chat or you can raise your hand or whatever. I'm just curious to see if anyone has done them or not. All right, well, it looks like no one has done them, so this will be exciting. I'm glad that you all can learn about something new today and see if it's something that you might want to incorporate as a part of your sort of action plan or follow-up as you think about increasing the employee engagement at your health center. So stay interviews. We're going to do a little bit of what, why, when, and how, what, why, who, how, and really when, or timing and frequency there. So really go through all of the ins and outs of stay interviews so that you all can be informed about what they are and how you might use them to increase employee engagement at your health centers. All right, so what is a stay interview? Well, a stay interview is a one-on-one conversation in which supervisors have really a simple and direct list of questions that they can talk to their supervisee about and really get information about how things are going and really understand the level of employee engagement at that point in time, right? So a couple of things here. It is a structured discussion. It's not just a quick check-in between a supervisor and the person that they supervise. It's not just a quick check, right? It's something that is deliberate, that is everyone knows about in advance, that the questions are written out in advance, and to really get at exactly what is going on with them in that one-on-one fashion. We'll talk a little bit about some ways where we can get some more open-ended feedback from folks, but this is really that structured discussion where the questions are listed out and they can understand where the supervisor can understand where the supervisee is with their employee engagement at that current time and what actions that they can take to really increase that engagement. All right, so why do we do stay interviews? Well, I'm glad you asked. Well, first of all, they help a supervisor bring information in to their own wheelhouse that can be used today. So there might be some things that someone really takes a look at and says, okay, well, we need to change this, or I need to change this now about how I'm interacting with the folks that I'm supervising, or this person in particular. It really is those actionable things that can be used today. These also focus on individual employees, right? Including your top performers. A lot of times there are situations where we might be thinking about really talking to those that aren't performing well or aren't doing them, or aren't doing as well as maybe some other folks. But these stay interviews are really designed to really look at everyone and how they're doing and what they're doing at an individual level, right? So staff satisfaction surveys are wonderful, wonderful tools, and that's the whole purpose of Learning Collaborative. But to have something that augments them, like a stay interview, allows us to focus down on that individual level and really get that one-on-one interaction. And then finally, stay interviews can put supervisors in the solution seat, right? So the number one reason why folks leave their job is their manager. And so by doing stay interviews in conjunction with the staff satisfaction survey, we can really put our supervisors in the solution seat, and that they can really make a difference by talking and interacting with the folks that they supervise directly. All right, so I love this slide, and I think it's really interesting, and I have it in here, and I hope it isn't confusing for folks, because I have a little bit to say about it. So employee engagement strategy. So there's really two different ways to look at it. And I would say that I probably should have changed this instead of or, it should be and, because I truly believe that an HR solution with a bunch of surveys in various forms, right? So engagement surveys, exit surveys, which we're going to talk a little bit about in a minute, all of the different surveys and employee committees, and a lot of the other things that we're going to talk about today is alternatives or additions to staff satisfaction surveys. They can be used in conjunction with, or instead of this or, and the and also just totally lost my train of thought. I'm very, very sorry. In addition to where we have the one-on-one, stay interview section, right? So this is not an either or. This is something that really can, and frankly, should be done in conjunction with those surveys, right? Because as I mentioned, we have a lot of quantitative results that come as a part of staff satisfaction surveys. Depends on how they're structured, but a lot of it is quantitative. Very little is qualitative. So, right, so you have, or excuse me, reverse that. It's mostly quantitative and a little bit of qualitative, whereas stay interviews are almost exclusively qualitative, right? And so having both is really, and can be crucial. So this is something that you all decide to do in addition to staff satisfaction surveys. It really can augment that and give a totally different approach to really to employee engagement and all of that. So again, instead of the or, I would say and, because I really do believe that they have a purpose and a place for each one of these things. And frankly, there's no one size fits all for any of this. And so you have to decide what's best for your health center, but really putting all these ways of gathering information and the way to build that conversation amongst employees and leadership is super important, and one way that we can, again, augment those staff satisfaction surveys. All right, so one of the great things about stay interviews is that they build significant amounts of trust, right? And again, the number one reason that employees stay or leave or engage or disengage is because of their immediate supervisors. Oftentimes, it's not about salary, it's not about vacation days, it's not about benefits, it's about trust. And obviously, I think all those things are very, very important. And those of you who have already done staff satisfaction surveys, I bet you that you have something in there about all of those different things, right? Benefits, something relating to salary, maybe not, their exact salary amount or, should we pay you more, but something about wages and benefits and all of those things. But really helping to build that trust and is really important. And then, also having said that, it doesn't mean by doing stay interviews and building that trust, it doesn't mean that they don't trust their boss. But, obviously that might be true, but it's not always the case. But it does mean that each leader and each supervisor becomes your retention solution and this perspective, right? So stay interviews helps to build that trust of that immediate supervisory relationship. And oftentimes the supervisor is not necessarily someone who's in the C-suite. It's a middle manager. Those are the people that we are really talking about here, and that can really affect change in a meaningful and positive way when it comes to your health center staff. And again, really a way to really, take it from sort of the 50,000 foot view to really the 5 or the 10,000 foot view when it comes to these versus something like a staff satisfaction survey. Sorry, my screen is not advancing as quickly as I would like it to. Okay, so again, why? In addition to building trust, there are a couple advantages to putting these into place. And again, in addition to your staff satisfaction surveys. So first of all, the employees get to hear directly from their supervisor. This is not something that they are hearing from leadership or from a department head or something like that. It's directly from their supervisor. The supervisor wants them to grow and succeed within their organization. Also, in addition to that, they take responsibility about engagement, right? This is something that they understand that's important and that they are taking a personal stake in. They might not be able to change everything, right? They can't change corporate policies, or if you have a large health center, that there are things that they can't change. But those really, the engagement and the caring part, they can really make a big difference in and really increase that level of trust and engagement there. Stay interviews also help employees take responsibility for staying, right? So it's not something that they're just going to make a blanket statement that leadership doesn't care about me, or no one ever listens to what I have to say or my questions. Because if you have stay interviews, if stay interviews are an overall part of your employee engagement plan, then you can't say, or they have less chance, if you will, of saying those things. Because in reality, if you have these opportunities for leaders to sit down with the people that they supervise and talk about these things in a really targeted and focused manner, and the onus is on them. Because if we, I say hypothetically, give someone a chance to sit down and say, what's going on? Why do you stay? And we'll talk a little bit about questions in a minute. It really does put the onus on them that you had the chance to respond to that question and give your feedback. And so you can't say that no one listens to you, right? And obviously, I mentioned before, leaders and these supervisors who are conducting these state interviews maybe can't change all of the really big things, but the day-to-day items, in communication, in, work environment, those type of things that the leader is directly responsible for, they can change that. And so giving a employee an opportunity to respond to that and take some of that ownership on them, that they have expressed that, it really does help them really take responsibility for either staying or frankly leaving. And then again, finally, they build trust. Can't say that really enough. And if one thing that we have really talked about is really that communication loop, where from beginning of just thinking about doing any sort of surveys or satisfaction, surveys or engagement surveys or pulse surveys or any of those things, is really building trust and really building that communication factor and really opening the door so employees feel empowered that they can share things with leadership, whether it be direct supervisor or corporate leadership. All right, so who is going to do the state interview? So a lot of times, and I will say for this case, that leaders are going to be the ones who conduct these surveys with their staff, right? So somebody that is a direct supervisor is conducting with their supervisee or staff members. But there are also some times where HR staff can conduct them with staff. And I would say that and/or is right on here. There are some that would argue that it should 100% be a leader, because that is where that trust factor comes in and really building it with leadership. And also some people would say that absolutely not, that you need some removal of that. And they're too close in proximity, both literally and figuratively, for staff to really give meaningful and engaged and purposeful and honest feedback to their supervisor. So they would say that HR should be conducting these interviews. Honestly, I think that whatever works best for your organization, again, you've seen One Health Center, and I would say that whatever works best for your organization is what you should do. So if you're thinking about doing this in addition to the staff satisfaction surveys, and you're thinking, trying to put all this together, figuring out who is going to do that, I would say 100% figure out what works best with your health center and what works best at your organization. There might be some times where if this is something new for you and you decide this is something that you want to do, then you could have the HR staff do it and then train the leaders to do it, or maybe vice versa. However it works for you, I think really the point is that really that one-on-one conversation and giving staff and empowering staff to share how they're feeling and share answers to really these targeted questions about what their engagement is like at your health center. So again, there are a lot of schools of thought to this, but either HR or leaders, the direct supervisors, can do this. All right, so how are we going to do this? Well, how are we going to do them is one of the most important ways that we do this, right? And so one of the big skills that is important when it comes to a state interview is listening. And so here on this slide, you see that really the thought is to listen 80% of the time. It is something that listening is hard to do sometimes, but it's really essential when it comes to getting feedback for your employees. Again, no matter what the type is, whether you're doing a formal survey or state interviews or other types of feedback gathering, if you will. So really just listening up to 80% of the time. So most of the time you're just listening. Then whomever is conducting the state interview is going to want to probe to learn more. Tell me more. Can you give me an example? Or those type of questions where you're following up to really understand more specific about what that person shared with you, and really get to the heart of exactly what they're saying or thinking, or all of those type of things. And then finally, take notes. this is really important because it is a verbal conversation. It's not something that you're going to have, be able to print out or be able to take a look at an Excel spreadsheet. It's really important to take notes so that the major things that folks say, any quotes that they say that you might want to just really think about and take home to your, take in for yourself, or, talk about at a leadership team meeting or things like that. And obviously being kept confidential, but really things that you just really want to keep down and think about and take action on. Take those notes so that you can follow up and really take those actionable steps as a part of the follow-up process for this. All right, so listening 80% of the time, probing, and then taking notes is really one of the three of the biggest things when we talk about stay interviews. All right, so Dick Finnegan, who is the author of the Stay Interview Guide, I believe, and I will get that for you and put it into the discussion board. If I cannot think of exactly what it is here during our session, I will put it in there. He says that there are only 5 questions that you should ask as a part of your stay interviews. Now, in our next slide, I will show you a lot more of stay interviews that you could possibly ask, but these are the 5 that he says that you should ask, and only these 5, right? They should always be the same, no matter who is conducting the stay interview and who is and how many people are asking it to. So first one, what do you look forward each day when you commute to work? And if they don't commute, what do you look forward to each day when you're making your coffee before you log in? What gets them excited about this job, right? And so again, some probes here would be, tell me more about that. Or can you give me an example of those type of things? So what do they look forward to when they come to work? And then second one, what are you learning here and what do you want to learn? Now, a couple slides ago, we talked about investment in the employees, and this really gets at that, right? So what are you learning and what do you want to learn? Do they want to go from being a front desk person to being an RN? These stay interviews can really help you understand that. Do they love the interaction that they have at the front desk, and that just really fuels them, and that just really fills their bucket, and they just really love that. And so stay interviews are a really great way to see professional development paths and how folks might want to really, what their career goals might be. Third, why do you stay here? Again, some probes for this one would be, can you tell me a little bit more? Or can you give me an example of a time when X, Y, and Z, right? Why do you stay here? What makes them stay? Is it because you have alternative schedules? Is it because they have really great leave? Or is it because of other perks? Like, why do they stay? And really what makes them come to work every day, right? And then the fourth, this is a doozy. When was the last time you thought about leaving us? Because yes, everyone does think about leaving. And what prompted it? Again, this is a hard thing to ask, but everyone has thought about leaving their job at some time or another, and what prompted it. And maybe a follow-up question is, well, have things changed? Or what can we do to make it better? Or tell me a little bit more, right? And so even though this is really hard to hear, again, everyone thinks about leaving their job. I don't care who you are, what position you're in, how much money you make, all of that. Everyone has thought about leaving their job. And so these two are really important. That's why I'm pointing at my screen like you guys can see me. But why do you stay, and when is the last time you thought about leaving us? Those are two really, really interesting questions to be asked. And then finally, what can I do to make your job better for you? Is it the way you communicate? Is it scheduling? Is it processes? Whatever it is, really getting at those specifics. And this is not meant to be like a laundry list, but what is your top thing that I can do to make your job better? Or what are those several things that I can do to make your job better that I have control over, right? And again, if it's HR, so I, meaning if I'm the leader asking the folks that I supervise, so that would be what can I do to make your job better? Or if HR is asking it, what can we do to make your job better? What would make coming to work for you better every day, right? And so again, there are a ton of questions that you can ask, and these are a bunch of those. And again, you'll get those slides, so you'll see all of these there, but ton of other questions that you can ask, right? So what motivates you? How do I best support you? And then over on the other side, what is the best part of your job? And then what would you cut out of your job? So lots of different questions that you can ask. And I would say that if this is something that you all decide to do, really try to not have it be this huge laundry list of questions, but just a few that you pick out to ask during your stay interviews. And Catherine, I see you have your hand up, and I apologize if you've had it up for a while. I didn't see it.
No problem. On Friday, I was at another conference, and one of the speakers talked about the feelings of safety and actually stages of safety. And one of the things that, at least in the small group and one of the earlier sessions, was about even when staff satisfaction surveys were anonymous, people didn't necessarily feel they were anonymous. So I think there are some times when people don't always feel safe in their workplace, but they're still there. And maybe they feel a level of safety with some people, but not others. And, so given that, it seems like you need to monitor in some way, shape, or form, and I'm not sure how you do it, as to the quality of the answers that you're getting back. Because one of the things that I've noticed in a couple of years before COVID, and I've been working at home since COVID, but one of the things I noticed is that our youngest workers didn't seem to have a filter in terms of complaining, whereas us older folks were less likely to put things in verbally. And so what I'm saying is you might get a mix of how useful the information you get out of this is. And now seeing these questions on this screen, I realized that it wasn't called a stay interview, but recently our leadership team, of which I'm one, were asked far more than these kind of questions. And it was a part of kind of looking at where things stood in terms of job titles, responsibility, performance review in a sense, and so on and so forth. So even filling out the document, a few of us talked with each other about, how comfortable are you with this?
Right.
And we're in a leadership role, so.
Yeah. It's a valid question, Catherine.
Yeah. It just occurred to me, and especially hearing that presentation that talked about the different levels of safety. There are things that I would tell my boss, and there are things that I'd be afraid to tell my boss. And that's probably true of most people.
Yeah, I thank you for bringing that up, Catherine. That's a really good point, and I'm glad that you did, because that slide that had the supervisor, let me get back to it, leaders and staff versus HR and staff, I think this is a really important one to think about, because I would agree. a lot of organizations are working towards having a culture of safety where you feel physically and psychologically safe. Obviously, physical safety is important, but having a culture of psychological safety is very, very important. And so this kind of goes hand in hand with that. And so if this is something that you're just starting out with and you really haven't done a lot of work in, and this is new, then maybe that's a situation where HR is going to want to be asking the questions because, you don't want to, tell your immediate supervisor or your boss, the answers to these questions, or you're feeling like you're going to hold back. And I will say that personally, I have not had a situation where I have done a state interview with a direct supervisor. It's only been HR staff. And that conversation is different, although maybe not, maybe it wouldn't be the exact same. It might be approached in a different way if it were a leader versus an HR person, right? It's sort of an anonymous, not anonymous, but not your direct supervisor. So I think that is absolutely something that is important to think about when you're thinking about state interviews, right? Because, and I remember, us talking about it, making sure that surveys are anonymous because you want to get that feedback. And so if folks are not even going to respond to a staff satisfaction survey because they're worried about the anonymity, then this is something to really think about. And if you're going to think about doing a state interview or asking these type of questions or asking leadership about it, then how are you going to ensure that everyone or the folks that you're asking to answer these questions feel psychologically safe so that they might open up and you might get the most, really the best answers that. And then there was a question in chat about, would you recommend we alternate between managers and HR conducting state interviews? Absolutely. I think that if this is a road that you're going to go down, like I said, you want to start with HR staff, but feel like everyone sort of has the hang of it. And then you want to go and really train your leaders, your direct supervisors to do this with their staff. I think you could absolutely do that. And you see how that works. And if you weren't really getting the feedback that you wanted, maybe go back to HR staff. Or if you're having great success with the leaders and staff, that direct line, then you could really keep it that way. But I would say there is no one size fits all. And so really just figure out what works for you. I think that either is fine. And it just depends on your staff and it depends on your leaders. And I hate to not be wishy-washy, but to say it's okay either way. But truly, I think it is okay. And at the end of the day, it's getting your employees engaged and it's getting your really building that culture of engagement that you have. And it's not just, at the end of the day, it's really just what works best for your organization. Does that help you guys?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome, great. All right, wonderful questions. Thank you for asking this. All right, so again, ton of questions that you can ask. I would say that if you're going to be doing state interviews, like I said, pick a few. Don't have this be something that's going to take someone like 3 hours to do, but really think about what information you're trying to obtain and what questions might help you obtain that information in the best way. All right, so timing and frequency. If this is something that you're going to do, when should you do them? Well, during the first year of someone's tenure at your organization, aim for twice during that time period. And the reason that we say that is because things change a lot during the first year of an employee's tenure. And so checking in with them on a regular basis, just kind of like doing a pulse check. Tammy was talking about pulse surveys in our last session, and this is really kind of like that pulse check to really see what's going on in real time. And, what are you learning? What do you want to learn? What do you look forward to? Those type of things. And really getting them, really getting a sense of what's going well, what's not going well in the first little bit that they're with you. And then after that, annually is great. If this is something that you can do as part of like a 360 review process, not as a part of your annual reviews, but it's something that maybe is, at the 6-month mark or whatever, but that you do just as sort of a check-in on the other side of the year for that. That's what we would say. All right, so in addition to stay interviews, we have a bunch of other different types of alternatives or additions, as I said, to staff satisfaction surveys. So business team building activities. Again, this is not something where you're going to get that quantitative data. This is something where you have a team building activity, you ask for feedback on your team building activity, right? So you're going to get that qualitative data. Department and town hall meetings are situations where you have a group of folks, whether or not they're in a department or it's an all staff meeting, where you can open it up and ask for feedback on something general or something specific, where you can have leadership there to really get face time, because some of you might be at health centers that are really, really large, multi-sited, and so your leaders aren't always like getting literal face time with your employees. So these are an opportunity to do that, to really show that leadership wants to hear what employees have to say. And, especially as a result, if you're going to do this in conjunction with your staff satisfaction surveys, really, thinking about how you can really build that in alongside those surveys. Or if in your action plan, you're going to have these department or town hall meetings where you can share that information there. I know some organizations actually have these as complete alternatives. So they don't have anything on paper, they don't have anything over the internet or something that you would do on a computer. They do these and they gather that qualitative data. They synthesize it, they have someone, a scribe, putting it into, they synthesize it and, all of that. And then they have the results and go from there. Now, that's a whole different thing and that's a lot of work, but I think that these department and town hall meetings, or all staff meetings, can be really, really effective as in addition to your staff satisfaction surveys. Focus groups. Now, these are groups of folks you can have between, let's say, small groups. So anything under about 10 folks, but you don't want to have less than 2. So probably between about 4 to 8 people in each focus group, with 2 to 11 groups. But these are groups that you're asking questions relating to a specific topic, like how are our benefits, or what, like how is our new health insurance plan, or what does our vacation policy look like? So really, really specific things that you're going to want information on, not generalized, not something that is all encompassing, but really, just like they say, a group that is focused on one specific thing or one specific subset of an item there that you're looking to really get information on. Having an effective onboarding process where folks can give you feedback is really important. As I mentioned when we were talking about the timing of the stay interviews, this is really important as a part of that too. That feedback, that bi-directional communication is just truly, truly important with getting that feedback there. And then exit interviews, right? We all hope that folks are going to stay, but we know that they don't. And so exit interviews are just another way to really get information and feedback. Some would say that they're not useful, but I would say they absolutely are, because to Stephanie, to Catherine's point, folks might not feel empowered or like they're able to give feedback. So you want feedback in whatever place you can get it. And if during your exit interview, people are saying, I just really didn't feel safe to tell you what I really felt before out the door. And even though that's hard, you want to hear that so that you can work on changing your culture to be one that feels safer, psychologically safe so that they will get feedback before they're out the door, right? And so again, these are just some alternatives or just some additions to your staff satisfaction surveys. There are a ton of ways to get feedback. Another one that I saw said, monitor your social media and see what folks are commenting on. If you have a Twitter account or a Facebook account, what are folks saying on there and how are they engaging or not engaging with what you're posting? Now, I know that that's a totally different one, especially because a lot of times folks don't follow their employer on social media, but that's just another way you can do that. So think far and wide, think outside of the box about how else you can garner feedback besides staff satisfaction surveys in addition to your staff satisfaction surveys. Whatever you do, honestly, there's no wrong answer, but this session was just really to give you an idea of the things that you could be doing in addition to, or as an alternative to your staff satisfaction surveys. So with that, I will ask if there are any questions, or let me look and see if we have any. Looks like we don't have any hands up. Any questions? All right. So as we go into our homework, y'all feel free to ask a question if you think about it. But what we're going to do is, as we wrap up this learning collaborative and as we think about everything that we've learned, and before our wrap-up session next time, we are going to have one last homework assignment. So, this is really just sort of forecasting and thinking about all of the things in terms of implementing and responding to staff satisfaction surveys. So the questions and the assignment this week are, what are your plans following this learning collaborative of implementing a staff satisfaction surveys? And what are your plans are in regards to responding to staff satisfaction surveys? What are your greatest challenges that you think that you might face in terms of implementing and responding to those surveys? And how can you address them? And then who from your team are you hoping to get support from or buy-in? How do you plan to engage with them in this project? And we talked about relationships in that slide that we've had on every single session. Really think about who you need to make things happen if you've never done them. And if you have done them, have done surveys in the past, but are just thinking about responding to them, who do you need to engage to get those responses pushed through? And then finally, what do you need in the next 3 to 6 months to begin to implement or to respond to a staff satisfaction survey? What resources are you going to tap into to get what you need? And I would say with this last question, please, 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 if there is something that you know that you're going to need that you just don't know how to do, bring that, answer that, and bring it to our next session, because we are going to have a lot of time to have, we are going to have a time where we do a breakout group for our homework, but then we're also going to have really a time where we just do a back and forth and we go through these things, and we want to hear from you guys about what your challenges are and how you're going to implement these moving forward, and really help you all and really enable you all to do that. So that's our homework for this week, for this final assignment there. And then it will also be posted on the session board, which is here. Y'all know how to access it. And again, if you're having any trouble accessing it, feel free to email Mariah at mblake@clinicians.org, and she will get you logged in. And then again, finally, join us for the last session, November 15th from 2 to 3:15. This is going to be a very interactive session. And so I hope you'll come with your questions, your challenges, your thoughts, maybe some of your successes that you've had as a part of this learning collaborative that the assignments and the sessions have really made you think about, and things that you're doing or you're going to do in either implementing or responding to your staff satisfaction survey. So with that, I will say thank you again. And if there are no questions, I will have Mariah launch the poll. We're a little bit early today, but I'm sure everyone will appreciate a few minutes back in your day. Answer the evaluation if you wouldn't mind. Get in touch with us. Any point, you can email us, you can call us, and are looking forward to seeing you at the next and final session. I hope you all have a great day. Thanks, everybody.